My name is Professor Jim Arnold. I'm a professor at the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the home of General Mills.
Yeah.
So I'm especially interested in hearing what you folks have to say. And first we'll have our judges introduce themselves, and then we'll go on with just a couple of ground rules.
Okay, thank you. I'm Janet D'Elia. I'm a senior manager with Raytheon Company. We're a defense contractor for the U.S. as well as international customers. The business unit I'm responsible for is integrated defense systems, and I have 15,000 employees worldwide, and we're a $6 billion business for the company. Thank you for doing this. This is a great experience for both of us. Thank you.
And I'm Tiffany Gavin. I represent Compliance Week magazine, which is actually based in Boston, and I am the assistant director of programming and events. Some of my responsibilities are gathering speakers, to conferences to share best practices and to lead on the industry in a great direction. And I formerly worked at the Ethics and Compliance Officers Association, which was also formerly based here in Massachusetts. And this is my second time judging, so I'm really excited to hear what you prepared. Thank you.
We have just a few rules here, and we're just reading this to every team so that the ground is level. I don't think there'll be any new information here for you. In this part of the competition, you're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional. Didn't say I was a professor.
You just created a new word.
Yeah.
It's
Fictional.
okay.
It sounded cool.
Thank you. Business identity, and you're going to explain who we are in the beginning here and tell us. Make sure everyone here knows who you are. You will have 25 minutes plus a 5-minute cushion to present, so let's just say it's 30 minutes. And you will not be interrupted while you are speaking. We will start our questions after that, and we will have 20 minutes of Q&A. While we are in that Q&A period, we are going to stay in the roles that you have assigned to us, and you are going to stay in the roles of who you are. After that Q&A session, we will all take our masks off, and we will give you feedback just as professionals, and you will receive the feedback and ask us any questions as students. Using any sort of technical philosophical terminology or basing your argument on religion or theological grounds, those are considered serious weaknesses. And it will also be considered a serious weakness if you are standing and reading your cards. And although you are welcome to use the notes. And every member of your team that's up here must have some sort of a speaking role. And I see that is already taken care of. Do you have any questions for us?
No, we do not.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here today. My name is Gretchen, and these are my associates, Samantha and Allison. You, the Board of Directors at General Mills Incorporated, have asked us here today because you have several concerns about your child-marketed cereals. You've received numerous complaints from parents who are worried about the high sugar content in your cereals and are worried about the effects that they will have on their kids. You as a company feel that you have kind of hit a plateau in regards to improving the nutritional content of this product without compromising sales. We want to commend you for reaching out to us about this ethical issue because we feel that it shows your dedication to putting the consumer first, as well as your diligence to find the best solution. After reviewing your case, we have developed several solutions that address these present challenges, as well as taking into consideration the values of your company that include trust, respect, and care of the consumer. First, we'll go over your current mission statement and the marketing model you've been using, as well as its previous successes. Then we will identify the current challenges that you are facing, as well as how they directly relate to General Mills, ethically, financially, and legally. Finally, we will close with our own recommendations on how the company can move forward with this issue, as well as stay on track with your mission statement and hopefully become a breakout leader in this industry. So first, let's look at your current mission statement and successes. Your company has grown tremendously since its humble beginning as a flour mill in 1860. Since then, you have grown into a worldwide corporation who has over 100 products in 14 different product categories. Throughout this time of growth and development, you've always maintained to keep what's most important at your core, your consumer, the families. This is illustrated wonderfully in your mission statement, with its core value being, There. We serve the world by making food people love, along with your 5 core pillars, which are put people first, build a culture of creating, make food with passion, earn people's trust, and treat the world with care. Now, keeping those in mind, I will continue on with your current marketing strategies and the success you've had over the years. Although your biggest consumer demographic is families, your most well-loved brands such as Trix, Lucky Charms, and Cinnamon Toast Crunch are all directly marketed to kids. Recent estimates show that about 50% of industry cereal sales are kids' brands, as well as YTV Kids and Tweens report states that 97% of breakfast decisions are influenced by the kids of the household. You use this information well by promoting your main marketing tactic, which is establishing brand loyalty. Not only does this ensure that the kids stay with the company for years to come, but it also influences their decisions when they have families of their own. 3 ways that you successfully engage in brand loyalty is engaging with the consumer through box art, putting cartoon characters on your products, and establishing an internet presence. First, let's look at engaging the consumer with box art. So when a kid first walks down a market aisle, they immediately see the box art that's on your product. Their eyes are drawn to the bright colors and the fun cartoon characters on these boxes, and their attention draws specifically to that product. A Cornell study states that these boxes are placed lower on the shelf in the market aisle so the kids can interact easier with these boxes, not necessarily the parents. This study also found that the characters on these boxes actually have their eyes facing down to a 10-degree angle instead of straight on at the consumer. This is to establish eye contact with the kids and not eye contact with the parents. The importance of eye contact was also found in this study when the Cornell study asked participants to pick between 2 Trix rabbits. What they found was that there was a 16% increase in brand trust and a 28% increase in connection to the brand, with this Trix rabbit on the right who maintains eye contact versus the Trix rabbit on the left. So this shows that the use of engaging box art along with eye contact is establishing positive feelings with these kids even before they buy your products. Next, let's look at the cartoon characters you place on these boxes. Using popular cartoon characters is establishing positive feelings with these kids, and they're more likely to eat your product. This is shown how effective it can be by the Yale Red Center, an experiment they did about 2-3 years ago. They experimented with 44 kids, and they gave them a choice between 2 bags. Each bag had the same packaging and same snack inside. The only difference was one of the bags had a popular cartoon character on the front, and the other one did not. After the kids made their decision and they were surveyed, the study found that 50% of the kids said that the cartoon bag snack tasted better, as well as up to 70% said that they preferred the cartoon character bag snack over the plain one. This shows that it doesn't always necessarily matter what type of product it is, as long as there's a cartoon character on it. Even if you have a product that tastes similar to a competitor's, the kids are always going to choose General Mills in the end. Finally, your internet presence and interactivity. Within the last 20 years, the internet has become more influential in our modern society, with many of these kids you're interacting with creating a daily practice of using the internet every single day. The Center of Media Research stated that kids and teens spend about 20 hours a month on the internet, with 72% of that time spent on either game sites or social media, which both your company has. To show just how effective your internet presence has been, in the month of February of 2011, you had 227,000 visitors to your Lucky Charms site alone. Showing how successful this is, we want to make sure that we're being very clear that it's not the marketing strategy that is the concern, it is the contents of your product. All the examples that I have shown you are high in sugar content and low in nutrients. Up next, Allison will elaborate more on this ethical issue, as well as the health concerns they contain.
Thank you, Gretchen. So first, I'm going to talk about why marketing is so influential for children. And it all has to do with brain development. Children's brains are not fully developed. In fact, the brain develops from the back to the forward direction, leaving the foremost areas of the brain to be developed last. And this is precisely where the prefrontal cortex lies. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for controlling impulses and emotional reactions. And in fact, it can be thought of controlling higher cognitive functioning. In other words, this allows children to be able to weigh short-term needs and desires with long-term effects. So, because this region of the brain is not fully developed, and in fact doesn't develop until the age of 25, this leaves children especially susceptible to the advertising techniques, as Gretchen mentioned in the previous slides. And in fact, these children they're less able to control their emotional responses, especially if they see a character that they love so much and they see all this colorful artwork. So why is this a problem? As Gretchen mentioned, the problem doesn't lie in the advertising that you're using, but in fact in the products that you're advertising that are typically of high sugar content and low nutritional value. In fact, research has shown that excessive sugar intake has led to a variety of physical and mental manifestations in health. The three that I will be talking about in this presentation are the acute elevated dopamine release, obesity and related conditions, and dental cavities. To begin, acute elevated dopamine release. It sounds like a lot of big words, I understand that. But what is dopamine? Dopamine, it can be considered as a happy chemical. It is the chemical that is released when you eat something. It monitors motivation for food intake as well as reward system. So in other words, when you eat something that's high in fat, high in sugar, and it really tastes good, dopamine is released. So what does this mean? Dopamine has actually been linked to sugar addiction. Why? Because when you eat these high sugary foods, your body responds saying too much dopamine, and actually decreases the amount of dopamine receptors in the brain. Therefore, this reduces the stimulus. What does this mean in the long sense? This means that you'll actually develop cravings and desires that mimic a lot of addictive behaviors. This picture below shows that cocaine usage can actually mimic the sugar intake in the brain. And sugar addiction is an actual phenomenon that a lot of research will back up. In addition, there's an increased risk of obesity. This means with the depressed prefrontal cortex, as mentioned in the previous slide, as well, this promotes an overconsumption of these foods that are high in sugar and higher in fat. And naturally, this would mean an excess amount of food you're eating, which will promote an obesity-like or obesogenic environment. Lastly, I mentioned a lot of physiological, physical effects of this sugar intake, but mental effects are profound, especially with attentive deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. ADHD has actually been, a lot of research has shown that sugar intake, excessive sugar intake, actually worsens the symptoms of ADHD. And ADHD, if you're familiar with that, is a condition that typically is marked by a lower ability to maintain focus and control, and often manifests in the school environment. And excessive sugar intake has been linked to poor academic performance. So this doesn't just affect the physical person and this physical individual, but it actually affects their ability to succeed academically. The next condition I'll be talking about is obesity and related conditions. Since 1974, obesity rates have more than tripled. As you can see in this graph, the percentages skyrocketed over the last 30 years. So what does this mean in a sense? 15% of all American children are either obese or overweight. What does this mean? This means that they are susceptible to a lot of the chronic diseases that are associated with obesity. Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart attacks, strokes, bone and joint problems, and some forms of cancer. What's significant about this information is that these conditions were predominantly seen in the adult population in previous years. But now we have 8 or 9-year-olds who are developing these conditions that eventually lead to a decreased quality of life. Children are still growing, their bones are still growing, yet their bones cannot handle the excess weight that obesity provides. And they're developing orthopedic and bone and joint problems because of that. The CDC, which is a leader in the research regarding obesity in children, has actually listed the first cause of obesity as advertising of less healthy foods. So this is extraordinary because this shows how much information is actually known about this and that this is a problem that's being ignored. Next would be dental cavities. A study done in 2004 that focused on the relationship between the intake of sugar and the amount of cavities in a rural community. Over a 3-year span, they found that the amount of sugar consumed was actually directly proportional to the amount of cavities that a child had. And this was disregarding amount of brushing or natural dental procedures. So, in 2004, the Surgeon General Richard Carmona actually stated that because of these increasing rates of obesity and unhealthy eating habits, children are actually now expected to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. And this is very devastating because children are supposed to continue, they're supposed to be the next generation, they're supposed to be the strength in our society, and they're being affected by a lot of these conditions because of stuff that they can't control. Now, General Mills is by far not the only company that is affected by this. In fact, this is an industry-wide problem. General Mills has made previous efforts towards approaching this, and Sam will elaborate now.
Thank you, Allison. I'd like to start by saying that General Mills has not gone without progress. Your company has previously expressed concern about the startling impacts of sugar that Allison just mentioned when they made a pledge in 2009 to reduce sugar in all of its cereals advertised to children under the age of 12 to single grams of sugar per serving. While this is a wonderful start to improving the nutritional values of your cereals, there are 3 primary concerns our company has with this goal. First, the targeted consumers in this goal, children aged 12 and under, do not encompass the full spectrum of vulnerable youth. As Allison stated, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until the age of 25. Therefore, this goal is ignoring half of what we could consider impressionable youth. Secondly, serving sizes are deceiving. Because they are based on density, the amounts are inconsistent amongst the cereals, and therefore your aim for sugar reduction should reflect that. Next, current serving sizes are just simply not a reality. According to the Journal of Pediatrics, children pour on average 61 grams of sugar-rich cereals. For Lucky Charms, one of your more popular brands, where a serving size is 27 grams, this equates to 2.26 servings and 6 teaspoons of sugar for breakfast alone. We have this demonstrated here. This is 3/4 of a cup of your Lucky Charms cereal, which is the recommended serving size. When comparing that to the size of the bowl, we can see that it hardly covers the bottom of the bowl, and it's just simply not realistic when a kid is pouring themselves cereal, or an adult for that matter. 1 2/3 cups of cereal is the actual average amount that kids pour of these cereals. And in a bowl is a completely realistic amount to get them through their morning. Unfortunately, this amount of cereal contains 6 teaspoons of sugar and is not a great way for kids to start their day. And finally, even with the challenges that this goal presents, it is not yet accomplished. Currently, Big G Kid cereals contain 10 grams of sugar per less, not a single-digit serving, and this still doesn't count for the realistic serving sizes I mentioned. Another attempt at ethical improvement involves transparency. Here you see a screenshot of your Lucky Charms website, which, as Gretchen mentioned, had 227,000 visitors in 1 month alone. I'd like to direct your attention to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, where a banner reads, "Hey kids, this is advertising." This may be difficult for you to read from where you're sitting, and it's also difficult for the kids who visit the site. It's extremely unproportional to the size of the web page and is often ignored by your visitors. In addition, until development of concrete operational thought, which occurs between the ages of 7 and 11 years old, children are unable to comprehend that commercials are designed to persuade them. Therefore, even if they can read the fine print, they don't actually understand what advertising means. This is a violation of your mission statement pillar of earning your customers' trust. Taking all of these facts into consideration, we've developed 2 solutions that will benefit your company ethically, financially, and legally. One is short-term and one is a more long-term solution. We'll start with our short-term solution, which involves converting current child-targeted marketing strategies to pre-existing healthier cereals. This will allow your company to experiment with the success of marketing healthier options to kids and see for yourself what we're presenting to you today. We view this simply as a transfer of funds. A pediatrician and child obesity specialist wrote that cereal companies on average spend $156 million annually on kid-friendly commercials. Since this money is already being spent, we simply ask that it is transferred to your healthier brands. The potential success of the solution is demonstrated by another study done by the University of Pennsylvania. Children were presented with 2 boxes of cereal, one that read Healthy Bits and one that read Sugar Bits. For the first round of examination, the boxes did not contain any cartoons whatsoever. And although the formula was the same, the kids preferred the Healthy Bits over the Sugar Bits purely because they thought they were better for them. Kids want the healthier food. However, when cartoons were placed on the box, such as these Happy Feet penguins, the kids chose the box of cereal with the cartoon regardless of what the perceived health content was. So what's the moral of the story? Kids will overlook the health value of a product if there's a cartoon on the box. Our second solution we view as a more long-term solution because it involves time reformulating your cereals. Now we ask that you reduce the sugar content of your already branded cereals. You might be wondering how you do this. There's been much success in the stealth approach to eliminating sugar by your fellow competitors such as Kellogg's and Kraft Foods. The stealth approach to eliminating sugar involves reducing the amount of sugars gradually over time so that the customers don't actually perceive the difference in sugar content. It's essentially training their taste buds. We also recommend that you change the location of the sugar by moving the sugar that is in the cereals to an external coating on the cereal. When the kids place the cereal on their taste buds, they actually perceive the same amount of sweetness and are essentially tricked into believing that it's sweeter than it actually is. We also want you to encourage you to use more natural flavorings such as vanilla, cinnamon, fruit that don't contain processed sugars. Although you've claimed that you've hit a plateau in reformulating your cereals, we believe that there's plenty of room for growth. Cereals marketed to kids have 85% more sugar, 65% less fiber, and 60% more sodium, according to a study done by the Yale Red Center. Based on the success of your healthier cereals, which makes up over 50% of your annual profits, we don't believe that you have to sacrifice flavor for nutrition. You might be wondering what the fiscal impact of our solutions is. There are 2 primary costs: immediate investments in R&D spending and time. However, the benefits greatly outweigh these. You'll be able to have the ability to market General Mills as the company at the forefront of the health movement. This appeals to the parents who are your actual customers. It also allows you to promote your company values of trust, respect, and care for the consumer. And finally, it greatly reduces your risk of lawsuits, which can cost you millions of dollars even if you win the lawsuit. We believe that our solutions will allow you to maintain your identity while prioritizing the well-being of the consumer. To prove this point, Allison will now discuss prior lawsuits involving the food and beverage industry.
Thank you, Sam. So, I will be talking about the lawsuits that involved in the food and beverage industry. The first being the McDonald's Corporation. In 2010, the McDonald's Corporation was accused of using popular advertising techniques, such as putting toys in boxes and using colorful art to advertise for very unhealthy foods. And the average meal for McDonald's, you'll find there's 430 calories, and you'll find 9 teaspoons of sugar. And the average meal, the 430 calories, that's a third of the total calories a child needs, and they're eating it from one meal. Now, the result was in favor of McDonald's. However, this was not without costing McDonald's millions of dollars in legal fees, and eventually led to a change in the menu. As you can see here, McDonald's now offers apple dippers instead of their fries, and they also offer milk instead of the soft drinks. Similarly, in 2006, Kellogg's, which is a well-known competitor of General Mills, and Viacom, which is the parent company of Nickelodeon, which is a popular television show for children, were under fire because they were accused of using universally liked cartoon characters to support their unhealthier products. As you can see, the below image indicates Tony the Tiger, a popular character for Frosted Flakes. Although he can be seen encouraging children to engage in healthy lifestyles and to engage in physical activity, he is contradicting himself by supporting a brand that contains 11 grams of sugar for every 30 grams serving. And as Sam mentioned earlier, that serving is not realistic. The result was a settlement and an agreement to adopt new nutritional standards. Now we mentioned this because we wanted to mention that General Mills is not unlike a lot of the companies within the food and beverage industry. And in fact, General Mills was involved in a recent lawsuit in 2015. In an effort to create a product that was more, that was healthier, a healthier option for families, they created Cheerios Protein. However, the same Center for Science and the Public Interest, which accused the McDonald's and Kellogg's, actually attacked General Mills because of false advertising claims. The result was millions in settlement and legal fees. Now, this was a great step, a great first step towards providing a healthier option. The claims that were found were that the serving size was adjusted it was doubled. It was initially 27 grams for the Cheerios, and the Cheerios Protein was 55 grams. This also was not accompanied with an increase of protein, a significant increase of protein. And the new protein Cheerios actually had 17 times more sugar than the original. So, what does this mean in the real sense? General Mills isn't doing anything illegal. And our research actually didn't uncover any laws that directly regulate the amount of sugar in these cereals that are advertised to children. However, there are nutritional guidelines that were proposed at the industry and at the federal levels. The first being in 2006, the Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative. However, this was short-lived because it was largely voluntary and not universal among the cereal companies. In 2011, it was replaced with the Federal Interagency Working Group. This put a cap of 13 grams of sugar for every serving. The Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative was then revised in 2011, such that the lighter cereals, which were about less than 43 grams per cup, contained no more than 10 grams. And the denser cereals, which were greater than 43 grams, contained no more than 12 grams. However, in 2011, when the Environmental Working Group assessed the effectiveness of these guidelines in changing the standards of many popular cereal brands, 84 cereals that were assessed, they found that most did not meet the demands of the federal and industry standards. In fact, General Mills, out of all the cereals that were assessed, 82% failed. 82% failed the industry guidelines. 5% failed the federal guidelines. However, this is an industry-wide problem, as you can see. Kellogg's is not far behind General Mills. Post is not far behind. However, all of the companies in the food and beverage industry have failed to take into account and actually address the high sugar content in their cereals. So call to action. Like I mentioned, General Mills is not unlike many of the other cereals in the brands. However, since 2004, General Mills has boosted its research and development spending on health and wellness initiatives by 75%. As Gretchen and Sam have mentioned, they reached a plateau. They feel that they cannot adjust the nutritional standards or improve the nutritional standards of their products without compromising their sales. However, General Mills has boasted in the past about supporting the needs of the consumer. And with rising awareness of the obesity epidemic and other health concerns associated with excessive sugar consumption, there is a new movement towards health and nutrition. Therefore, we want General Mills to be at the forefront of this movement. In addition, we found that the actions of General Mills have compromised their mission statement, which promotes the values of trust, care for the consumer, and respect. We hope that in our assessment that you will take into consideration the guidelines and the proposed solutions for change. And we hope that you will continue to be a leader within the community. Thank you for your time, and we now open up the floor to questions and answering.
Okay, all right, thank you. We will stay in character, and we will have about 20 minutes of Q&A. What's the parents' role in all of this? This is all a lot of great data and all that, but I want to hear what you think about parents. They don't care that their kids are getting all this sugar?
Actually, in the contrary, many of the parents actually drove the lawsuits. In fact, the lawsuit regarding McDonald's was actually driven by one parent by the name of Sherry Carlson. And she, in fact, criticized the company because she felt that it undermined her ability as a parent. Because her kids were not drawn to the food, they were drawn to the packages. They didn't see this as advertising. They saw this as, ooh, there's a toy. I want that, I want it. But they didn't care about the food. And she felt that the nagging factor, which is actually quite well used in these advertising techniques, when you target the child and the parent wants to please the child, they want the child to be happy, even if that means getting a McDonald's meal for them. And in fact, the Kellogg's company the lawsuit was driven by 2 other parents. So parents are actually at the forefront of this movement, and they want change, but they realize that their power is only conditional if their children are being swayed without permission.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, the one image that you had of all of the cereal boxes, and, I can remember when my children were younger, Cinnamon Toast Crunch was it. For me, it was Captain Crunch. Remember that? So it's kind of like you're going down and it's a pot of gold down that aisle, right?
Yeah.
So I guess from a board perspective, I need to understand, I think you're making a solid case for switching the marketing towards a healthier, if we can sell these boxes of sugar with these characteristics, we can do the same for more healthier cereals, right? But I need to understand, from my perspective, what are my numbers? What am I set by type of cereal? Healthy cereal, borderline, sugar, all sugar, right? So what are my sales? What are my cost of sales for each of those? What are my margins for each of those? So I can envision, what am I shifting? Where am I gonna lose? But I would also hope that with your recommendation, I'm going to pick up sales by adopting your recommendation. So what's the benefit of that shift?
Okay, so the information that we found has actually been unfortunately very limited in terms of financial implications, and General Mills doesn't publish a breakdown of all of their brands of cereals on their website, which to us kind of indicates that there's an ethical problem, this lack of transparency, and wondering the reasoning for this with the customers. However, we were able to find some data that 51% of your income sales from cereals comes from cereals that you, as the company, label as better for you and your healthier cereals. So actually more than half of your income comes from healthier cereals, which kind of supports the idea that healthier does not necessarily mean less successful or less flavorful. In addition, the ability to market your brand as the forefront of the health movement as the cereal brand that is really taking off with this and promoting healthier cereal to kids will greatly increase sales. So
that's what the expectation is.
Mm-hmm. And the money is already being spent. Like we said, for the most part, this money is already being put towards these other cereals. So we simply ask that the money is shifted to target your healthier brands.
So what did I spend the increase up to 75% on R&D on? Where did all that money go?
So some of the money is going towards minor adjustments to your cereals. So as you can see on here, you can see that there's like a whole grain guaranteed. So you've been kind of reformulating already, but a lot of it is just kind of cutting around the borders, cutting out a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's not making a huge impact. Also recently you've made gluten-free Cheerios for your gluten-free consumers, and you have actually started taking up the initiative to phase out using artificial chemicals and coloring in your cereal, but that is not going to start being phased out until 2018.
And what's my marketing on those types of boxes? What's my imaging on those?
A lot of it is very similar to this. It's using your very bright blue logo. It's not using the bright, colorful cartoon characters. It's using more of a family-friendly marketing look.
And like Gretchen mentioned, eliminating the food dye does not actually change the nutritional value of the cereal in terms of like caloric value. And so it really is kind of skirting the issue and not actually targeting the core root of the problem. And General Mills has claimed that they've hit a plateau where they really can't reduce the sugar content anymore without sacrificing taste. But we would argue that you have plenty of other cereals that have done really well to contribute to 51% of your sales that adults eat, and that they wouldn't consume if they tasted poorly. So we believe that there's a lot of room for growth still.
Do I, as a company, have an obligation to advertise differently out there in a broader sense, not for boxing, but packaging, but more in a commercial, broader sense? Do I have an obligation to market more of those favorable cereals, healthier cereals, versus showing commercials that are Lucky Charms and Tricks and those? Do I have that obligation?
So that kind of goes with our two-part solution. What you're suggesting would be kind of that short-term solution of switching your marketing to your healthier cereals that already exist. However, in the long term, we're actually saying that you can continue to market your cereals such as Lucky Charms, Tricks, all those ones that already have pre-established brand loyalty and that kids are already familiar with, given that you reduce the sugar content of those cereals over time. So in both circumstances, you're promoting a healthier cereal. One's just more immediate because you already have the formulated cereals and you're directing advertising there, whereas one would be more long-term, and then would allow you to gradually phase back in that advertising.
And we understand that you are trying to create brand loyalty with these kids, and using these cartoon characters in the bright colors, you're really establishing that emotional connection with them. We're simply asking that instead of making it an unhealthy product, you're making it a healthier choice for these kids, so you continue that brand loyalty with these kids into their adulthood, where they would want to make a more healthy option.
So timing is so you know, it's really kind of a short term of time. You're talking 24 years, which really isn't a whole long time. How long has how long have we been around, right, the company? So I would suspect that maybe we could start introducing a sugar-free fun cereal within the next, say, 5 years, so that that trend starts shifting and all the sugar goes away. And I think I would save money by not having to put in sugar and buying that ingredient. So.
And the health movement is moving so quickly that at this point we feel that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is something that we don't want to wait until the company continues to face more lawsuits, or until the health movement is in full swing to make these changes, because the parents aren't waiting for that. They're starting to make these shifts now, and by being at the forefront of that gives you an edge over your competitors.
Going to the timing, as far as the short term and long term, what would be the time frame that we can implement those changes? Because long term can really be 5 to even 10 years, or it could be even 3 years, still considered long term. Have you thought about that as to how long it would take us to implement those changes?
Yeah, so based on the pledge that you made in 2009 to reduce sugar from approximately 15 grams to single digits, so that's been about 7 years or so. That's taken to reduce approximately 5-6 grams of sugar in your cereals. So I would say for the long-term solution, probably about another 5 years. However, for the short term, this is something that I think could really be shifted within the next year or so.
Are you concerned that that's still too long? That 5 years, I mean, a child can be anywhere from middle school to graduating high school and leaving college, or being a toddler and going to first grade. So are you concerned with that 5 years is still too long? And as far as the being healthy, it impacts their health overall anyways, that even if it took us 7 years to just reduce it with 4 grams, that's kind of not that big of a deal, I guess.
I guess we would argue that with the increased R&D spending, that could actually happen more quickly than it did in the past. But that's just a time estimate based off of kind of how General Mills, your company, has been working thus far. I would argue that we have to start somewhere, and that saying that it might not impact the kids that are young right now is not an excuse of why we shouldn't fix it for the kids in the future. I also, like Allison mentioned, kids are considered vulnerable and impressionable up until the age of 25 years old. So that gives us a huge range of kids that we can still impact and switch their loyalty to different brands. Kids are willing to change on the fly and are very moldable, and so we want to use that to our advantage.
Sure. And have you looked at other health concerns such as coloring and natural versus chemical food dye? Because there've been plenty of research now available that it actually deteriorates the health of the child and goes into, again, the ADHD and other health concerns in the future. Is sugar really the main concern, or is there another health concern in our cereals?
Yeah.
So yes, so there are a lot of things that could be fixed to improve the health quality of this food. We address sugar in particular because of the obesity epidemic that is amongst us right now, and how many children are being diagnosed with all these conditions associated with obesity and are having shorter lifespans because of that. So yes, there are other parts of the cereal that could be adjusted, that could be fixed. However, we are emphasizing the sugar because that is something that immediately needs to be addressed. Not saying that, coloring isn't going to have adverse effects. I mean, artificial sweeteners have horrible adverse effects, and that might be something that companies will switch to immediately because they're like, oh, sugar is bad, let's put artificial sweeteners. Well, one of the things that Sam was mentioning is possibly adding more natural flavors, so like fruit and like things that accompany the cereals with fiber and a lot of other aspects of nutrition that are often forgotten about. So we're not just encouraging sugar, we're emphasizing sugar because that's something I feel like we have agreed is a major concern that needs to be fixed immediately, but we're also encouraging other habits or other changes that will improve the overall health of the child.
Is my price point different for the sugar? To buy a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Lucky Charms, is it less expensive than it is to buy a box of shredded wheat? Am I facilitating that sale to that parent that's on a fixed income by providing and offering sugar-filled cereal at a less expense? And is that something that I should consider changing?
That's a really good question. I think right now, because there is a movement towards healthier lifestyles and healthier living, a lot of companies that do provide those types of cereals that are high in fiber, that have little sugar, are also promoting an organic kind of diet, and they're appealing to a lot of the people who are that are really concerned about nutrition, and thus have an advantage of increasing their prices for their products. It's not necessarily that it would be more expensive. There are definitely ways to provide a healthier option without it, putting you in debt. But yeah, that's definitely something that we should look into a little bit more clearly.
So I think that there's definitely a parallel with lower income families and buying sugar cereals because that's more affordable. It's more affordable and it's more appealing to them, right? So and the other thing that goes along with that, sometimes they're not as educated. So what are we doing to educate all of our customers? But maybe it's something that we need to look at the price point as well, and offer a healthier choice cereal at the same price point as a sugared cereal.
I think one thing that's important to know is that's definitely true. If you go into a Ralph's in Crenshaw or Watts in the LA area, and you go to a Ralph's in Beverly Hills, you'll see stark differences in the amount of the products that are advertised. And that also shows there's actually a discrepancy in the life expectancy for someone who has that access in Beverly Hills. I actually did a research paper on how there's a 10-year life expectancy difference between someone who lives in Bel Air and someone who lives in Watts, and they're only a couple miles away from each other. So yes, there could be a financial aspect to that, but however, there are always ways around it, and I know for a fact that the education is an important part, and a lot of people do not understand what they can do to provide a healthier option. And so they're like, I grew up on cereal, I'm fine, let me give that to my child. But they don't know, hey, I could make oatmeal, instant oatmeal. It takes a minute or so. Let me put some fruit on it. It's a great option for my child. Maybe put some peanut butter. It's great protein. They don't know how easy it is to eat healthy. So it's also about convenience too. And if you adjust your cereal so that it's a healthier option and appeals to people who are working families who need that fast source and also are concerned about health, then you would be at the forefront.
Or have a limitation to their income, right?
And that could be something when you talked about kind of promoting and educating the masses. That could be something that is advertised in your boxes and maybe like recommended serving suggestions. If you sell like granola, you could talk about the different ways that you could eat it that are healthier for the consumer, and that could be part of the advertising campaign.
Do I make oatmeal? Does Joan know? Who makes the oatmeal? Who makes Quaker Oats?
Quaker Oats.
It's its own company.
Yeah, you have a product of oatmeal, but it's not Quaker Oats.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what the benefit of that is? A lot of those socioeconomic, the lower socioeconomic communities are devastated with only small corner stores that don't provide a lot of fruit, vegetables, and a lot of healthier options. And there are a lot of initiatives in the LA community that are actually going into these stores and teaching store owners how to address health concerns, how to pick proper products. So there are efforts towards that. We're just asking that you guys take a step along with those communities.
So one thing you mentioned was that children are the deciding factor of, I forget the figure you said, I'm
97%.
Yeah. And they are the deciding factor until they're in their 20s. So, the argument. Anyway, it's called picking your battles. But so what are we doing, because now, TV advertisements there, but what are we doing to promote safer, better choices for online, with everybody being online? How are we changing our marketing in that area?
How do we recommend you make those changes?
So how are we going to do that, and do we have an obligation to do that?
Already your marketing on the internet is fairly child safe. It's a lot of kind of educational games for them, playing with the different cereal, like for Lucky Charms. It's playing with the different marshmallows, going on little adventures with the leprechaun, which is kind of part of why you should think about changing your branding from using these cartoon characters for a sugary cereal and changing it to a more healthy option, because these kids are identifying with these mascots and these characters, and they're used a lot in your internet media. And it's very successful there. Kids spend a lot of time on the internet, and they're going to these sites instead of signing up for Facebook or going on certain sites that don't necessarily block children or have like an 18-year-old version. So you're already successful in offering a more safer website for these kids. You're simply promoting a unhealthy option with using a more safer site.
So maybe I need a superhero that's going to pick up a bowl of oatmeal and have that as an interactive game instead of a Lucky Charm looking at a charm.
Exactly.
The Lucky Charm will just dive into a bowl of oatmeal.
And we don't want the Lucky Charm guy in the superhero battle.
Any more? You're okay, because we have. Okay. Well, very good. I will cut off the Q&A and give you some applause, and now we will take off the our masks, and we can just talk to each other, people to people.
Cool.
I really liked a couple of things I really liked. In your presentation, you really used the word "you" a lot, which is very important. You were talking to us. What I see sometimes in presentations is that no matter who the audience is, the presenters will go third person, and they'll just keep saying they. It doesn't make sense if we are the board, so I appreciate you doing that. Loved this. Yeah, loved that. And the more you can use something like that, the better, because I'm one of those people that is and always has been guilty of the big bag. And even though I know that what the FDA recommends, it's sort of, I can kid myself in saying, well, if I only fill the bowl. So props like that are wonderful. Very good.
So congratulations for coming here. So one thing I was impressed with right out of the gate was that there's a diversity of majors on the team. I think that's really important. You're going to find that throughout your professional career, that the more diverse your team, your group, you invite to your meetings, the more perspectives that you get and the better the results will be. So kudos for having that available. So, and then it's you would think it's such an easy topic, but it can be a hard sale, because at the end of the day, especially like General Mills, it's all about profits, right? And so I like the idea of looking at different options, and the more options you can provide, and the more possible results that the person at the board can see. What if analysis, that's really helpful when they're making those decisions and what paths to take. And also having a backup plan to those paths too. You presented very well, you were very professional. One thing there was one slide that your end quote was off, so just double check it's always good to have fresh eyes look at a presentation as well as the narrative, because you've been looking at it for so long and so many versions, you're not going to catch the obvious.
Okay.
When someone walks in a room and picks up a document for the first time, they'll probably catch 20 things like that. So we do that in our company with proposals. We get fresh eyes to look at the documentation, so that's my recommendation on the presentation part. But you did a great job, and I think Dr. White would be very pleased. Very nice to meet you.
Overall, I want to say that the presentation was very informative, great facts. I really enjoyed hearing more about the sugar and specifically how that impacts directly to children and especially the health factors. And I wish there was a bit more quotes or recent, more recent information because I find that information from 2000 is very different than information from even last year, because I'm actually a recent mom and everything's changing and all the guidelines are almost changing every couple of years that doctors what they used to recommend, and now I even get scratch paper and saying, oh, this is from 2 years ago, ignore that, this is the new guidelines. So things change constantly, and so I feel that more recent information will be definitely more useful, but still great facts, really. I can definitely tell you did lots of research on this, and whatever was available after all. Something to add on the quotes. I was going to say the same thing about the quote, but then it seemed that it was a little off. But I thought you did a great job.
Great, thank you.
So I have just a question. What would it take for General Mills to just take off all their sugar products off the shelves?
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, okay, but look at the option, right? The option is to go in the other direction and become known for taking that right stand towards the future of, it's not just the U.S., it's across the country or across the world, right? To reducing child obesity, reducing diabetes. Diabetes in children have increased dramatically over the past 20 years. So, what are the benefits if we decide to do that as a company?
I think the concern that I would have with doing something that immediate is that the competitors like Kellogg's are going to obviously continue to have these products promoted to kids, and so it's not really accomplishing the goal of getting these kids to switch a lifestyle choice, because they'll simply switch brands at that point. I think we recommended something just slightly more gradual, with the hopes that customers will probably maintain brand loyalty and change along with the brand, rather than, I think, eliminating all of those would turn a lot of kids away and push them more towards another brand. And at that point, you'd be losing sales, and then and also kids are just basically finding another unhealthy alternative rather than staying loyal to the characters that are already there, but having it be better for them.
So I, as a parent, would be interested to see if a company like General Mills took that one slave hit, right, and then just market the healthier cereals at a price point that low-income families could afford. Because that's really a driver as to why those sugar cereals are sold, is because of the income levels. And people can take food stamps and go and buy Lucky Charms, but wouldn't it be better if they could take those food stamps and go and buy a healthier cereal and a healthier choice and just market the whole thing, so that's the goal. But
That's the problem with food deserts too,
Mhm.
like where the fast food restaurant is the closest thing to their home, and they can buy food for the whole family for way more than they could at a grocery store where the options are
Well, think of a
healthier.
college student. What can they afford? Ramen noodles.
Mhm.
And how bad is it for them? What's the sodium content
It's
of ramen noodles,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very similar to that type of situation. You buy what you can afford. Now, when you can afford to go to, I don't know, a healthier, not even a restaurant, but a healthier takeout, right? You choose to do that instead of eating the ramen noodles at
That's
night
true.
because you can afford it, right? So when you get that work-study job, hey, one night a week I can go and, right? I can go to Chick-fil-A instead and eat my salad instead of eating my ramen noodles in my room. So it's really, income really drives it. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you for taking your time to listen to us.
Welcome to Boston. Is this the first time here?
Yep.
Oh, isn't it a great